Live from the local station, this is Weather Authority Weekday.
Good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Mark Collins. We're gearing up for that three-day weekend. Hopefully you have Friday off. Good news is that 4th of July fireworks look like they'll be less interrupted by thunderstorms. In fact, some dry air expected to move in, and we'll see some of that dry air here today. Now, it's not going to be a completely rain-free day, but the chance for rain is going to be more confined in our southern and inland areas, and that would tend to bypass much of the metro areas. Sunshine out there right now as we take a look out over Julington Creek. Pretty nice as the breezes are light, and temperatures are not going to get overly hot today. In fact, we're going to be looking for numbers mainly in the upper 80s, about 88 degrees, with just a few spotty showers. A 50% chance of rain west of Jacksonville. In the city here around town, we're only looking at about a 30%, and that would be around that lunchtime hour through 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's show you the bigger picture here. There's still that pesky front to our north. It's put the brakes on. So when you see the red and blue, that signifies a stationary front. Remember, those blue triangles all along the line is a cold front, and that's usually cooler air on the move southward. But we are not going to see much in the way of cold air, but it won't be hot. Reason being is because we're going to be dealing with more of a northeasterly flow, and that is a godsend because that northeasterly breeze, keeps us a little bit on the drier side because it pushes rain away from Jacksonville over to the Gulf Coast, and obviously that brings in the cooler flow off of the Atlantic Ocean, which can feel very nice. Now, behind that stationary front, there's those colors of orange. That is drier air in the mid and upper levels. With that drier air, it's going to be more difficult to get rain firing up. Where there is more moisture through the deeper portions of the atmosphere, you can get robust rains, the rains that usually put down some heavy flooding. And that risk will be mainly over central Florida as that drier air tends to nose in towards northern Florida. That would preclude us from the risks for flooding. What could cause some heavy rain? Slow motion of those showers and storms. And that could add up to some good accumulations in Clay County and Putnam County through the afternoon. All right, so let's take a look at the bird's eye view here, and we'll zoom in using this model, which shows rain developing around 3 o'clock out towards Lake City, areas around the Santa Fe River between Union and Bradford County. And notice how things are pretty quiet here in the metro areas. Now, as we head towards the evening, showers are still going to be dealing with somewhat of a south and southwest flow, so they're going to try to inch back towards the river. We may see that sea breeze develop during the early evening hours, but in general, things are pretty dry here around the cities from St. Augustine to Jacksonville through about 5 o'clock. Now, as we head into the evening time frame, this is where we could see some of the heavier rains up to an inch, inch and a half around Middleburg, Keystone Heights, even possibly inching back towards Green Cove Springs, and certainly around the Rodman Dam, around Palatka and the Ocklawaha rivers. Those areas could see some meaningful rainfall here as we head into the night. But notice not much rain showing up around the Jacksonville area. West side during the evening, we might see a brief shower or even an isolated thunderstorm before they collapse. One area along that stationary front tonight could see some nocturnal rains would be in southern Georgia, Waycross, Brunswick, some isolated shower activity overnight. And then we start to see more of a drier trend for Saturday. So better news here for your weekend plans. Now notice high temperatures statewide, not too hot. We're going to see fewer locations in the 90s because of that cloud cover and the heavier rains which will be over central Florida. But again, future forecast shows that today we're looking at mainly inland and southern areas of rain. Now let's talk about 4th of July because through the day, looking pretty dry along the beaches. We're looking at that northeasterly wind wiping away any rain chance. So that's pretty good. Now, if you're boating on the river, you'll probably see that there could be some isolated activity for that 12 to 2 o'clock time frame. Areas inland, there you see all the green. So will those inland showers and thunderstorms be around by the time the fireworks go off? Let's get you into that time frame. Sundown at 8:30 and look at how dry it is. So this bodes very well for your fire plans. There is no impact day on Friday because we just have no rain here to spoil your evening plan. So that is a nice switch from earlier in the week where we were thinking some tropical moisture could be around. Well, let's take a look at Saturday because the tropical moisture is offshore. There you see on the right side of your screen what could be a weak tropical depression trying to organize. Now, whatever circulation forms there, there's not expected to be a lot of deep convection, so I don't expect to see that really intensify quickly. But based on the National Hurricane System history of naming anything that has a circulation, they'll probably give it a name, even though it won't be a real threat. So what we'll be looking at on Friday is for those inland storms peaking during the early portions of the afternoon through around the early evening inland areas. And then by 8 o'clock, the odds of isolated showers will mainly be confined towards those inland zones. So back to the tropics now. We're looking at this area, this polygon, which was stretched from the Gulf of Mexico over Florida into the Atlantic. Notice how Florida is not under the area where we could see tropical development. And this will continue to scoot towards the Carolinas. The risk over the next 7 days for some development has increased, but the risk for severe weather is pretty muted. And the reason being is none of the models really show this getting to tropical storm force winds. Let's take a look at one GFS model. Here you can see those wind vectors, which are out of the south and southwest today. That's going to push those showers back towards areas around Palatka, Green Cove Springs. But notice the switch. There you see those northeasterly winds coming in on Friday, and that's what's going to push all our rain away. You also see the cloud cover, the white on there. Notice those clouds are heavier offshore. We are on the drier backside of this system. So the GFS takes that area low pressure and moves it towards the Carolinas by Sunday morning. So we are going to be seeing some dry air slide down the backside of that system, and then by Monday it's not even going to exist. In all likelihood, this would be another one-day storm, 24-hour to maybe possibly 36 hours along the Carolina coastline. Both the GFS and the European model are aligned with some type of weak circulation center moving towards the Carolinas. If that were to play out, the worst case scenario is we get winds at about 20 to maybe gusting to 25, possibly 30 Saturday evening along our beaches. So that is going to be the windier day. And then on Sunday, the winds will be light, back to very calm winds. There you can see the forecast showing those higher winds up along the Carolina coastline approaching 30-mile-per-hour winds. And this is an interesting graphic because the yellows show where the maximum lift is. We're looking at what we call 700 millibars, and I use this to see where the heaviest rain will be. So this is a Friday evening. Notice mainly towards central Florida is where we see the yellows, and then those yellows shift off the coast on Saturday. So we're not seeing any flood threats from any type of rains on Saturday, since most of that lift is going to be offshore. And that makes sense, right? The right side of any tropical system is usually where you get some of the heavier aspects from that storm. And then as we head into Sunday, all that lift goes away. So how much rain could we see out of this system? Well, we're not going to see any rain out of that system. In fact, this is Friday. Our own thunderstorms that flare up with the heating of the day could put down maybe less than a half inch of rain. But if they move slower, you might get 3/4 to an inch of rain totals. Notice the greener colors there. That's where we'll see the heavier rains targeting our southern spots. And then over the weekend, we're looking at mainly Saturday, some of those inland showers and thunderstorms. So rain totals will be mainly under an inch, and wave heights, if there were a tropical storm, you would see waves getting up to like 6 to 10 feet. Well, they don't. So this is GFS. This is one of the stronger models showing intensification. Here you can see that with winds at about 20 to 30 miles per hour, you're only going to get seas of 3 to 5 feet. And that would be Saturday night into Sunday. So I wouldn't really go offshore this weekend, but I also wouldn't really expect to see big waves for those of us who like to surf. It's going to be pretty choppy out of the northeast, but at least it'll be waist high. And I'll surf chop any day if it's waist to chest high waves out there. And we'll see that breeze picking up Saturday, and then Sunday we'll have cleaner conditions for the second half of your weekend. So standard rain chances at 50% here. We will be looking at a break in the really hot temperatures because next week, starting Monday, Tuesday, as we see the rain back off a bit, it's going to get a little bit hotter. All right, so coming up after the break, We're going to talk more about the tropics. Specifically, there is a new Google model. Yes, Google, you know, the Android phone, the Google search engine. They are the masters at AI. And they have a new weather AI model that the National Hurricane Center will be using. And I'm going to show you a way where you can use the model. I'm going to show you the web links where you can look at some of the details of the GraphCast AI Google model. And we'll compare that to the legacy models and just see how much better it actually is. We'll see you shortly. Hey everyone, I'm meteorologist Mark Collins. Fortunately, so far this hurricane season, we have not had any hurricanes here in the Atlantic Basin, just a couple weak tropical systems. The Pacific has been very active. And the folks that put out the official forecast, they work for NOAA at the National Hurricane Center in Miami. And these forecasters use models. The data that's collected around the planet go into models that use math and physics to emulate the atmosphere. And basically, by using math, you can predict the ascent rate of air as air rises. If it's humid, rainfall comes down. And if the ascent is fast, the pressures drop. And as pressures lower, the stronger the drop in pressure, the stronger the winds. And when all these variables come into play, you can get rotation and organized thunderstorms that become hurricanes. Starts as tropical depressions, tropical storms, then hurricanes. So there's a lot there to compute. A human can't do that. So that's why forecasters use models to predict the future of weather. Well, there is a new model that isn't really using all of those weather parameters. It's using AI. It's looking at case studies of thousands and thousands and thousands of past weather scenarios to forecast the current situation and what will become of that current weather situation. It's Google's GraphCast AI model, and I'm showing you here the accuracy of this model actually beats the legacy models, which only used the math and physics and relied less on previous storms to base the forecast on. And what you see here on the left, although it's kind of small, is a blue line at the bottom, which is the more accurate Google model for tracking tropical cyclones. And it can do more than that. It can track other type of weather features, mid-latitude systems, other features called atmospheric rivers. Those are jet stream flow patterns. And let me show you here, as we take a look at some of the products from the legacy model. This is the European forecast model. This here showing the probability of that system off of Florida's coast developing is only 40%. Now bear in mind the National Hurricane Center is calling for a 60% chance of this developing, and that bodes with their way of doing things. They always tend to forecast the worst situation. But notice here, this is the European model, and it shows that system moving off towards the Carolinas. Now let's take a look at the GraphCast model. So there's a couple different models here. The new experimental model you can toggle on, and this is a website at deepmindgoogle.com, and these blue dots show what's called an ensemble. It's basically looking at many different situations of weather and perturbing it, and when all of these different situations align in a tight cluster, that lends higher confidence that something will happen. Notice as you go back in time, so we're starting out here, notice the tight clustering. There's high confidence that there'll be some weak area of low pressure, and then it spreads just a little bit, but not enough to really bring up a lot of uncertainty. We feel that this low is going to be moving towards the Carolinas. What this does not show is the system turning into a tropical system. It keeps it as a very weak one. Now you can compare it to the European model, which is the most reliable legacy model that's out there, and those in orange show the same movement. So both models are in alignment here, and so that bodes pretty well that the Carolinas will see a soaking here as we head into Saturday. Now, when we compare this to the deterministic model, notice out here with Hurricane Flossie, you see an L. That is the hurricane, which is now weakened to a tropical storm. So let's take a look here. This was the model showing what was a powerful Cat 3 hurricane weakening down to a 1 and then becoming a tropical depression. So you can see how the deterministic model by the European also brings this area low pressure to tropical depression strength, but not tropical storm as it moves up towards the Carolinas and offshore. So this is a really good tool to just kind of use and compare to see how this model is relating to some of the older deterministic models that we use and the ensemble models. Here's actually the GraphCast model by Google being integrated in the European Centers for Medium Range Weather Forecasting. So they're the premier world institution for models. It used to be kind of neck and neck with the GFS, but with all the cuts at NOAA, there's less satellite data going into the GFS model this year. And a lot of the employees that run those models no longer work for NOAA. So it's going to be interesting to see the spread in accuracy compared to the American models and the European models going forward into this hurricane season. But with the Google AI model too, that's going to be a new tool that we can use to kind of make up for some of those deficits that we've been seeing here with the GFS model. So you can go to, like I said, the link for that is Google's GraphCast AI. You can just Google the model, and it will point you right there to that website that I just showed you. All right, so hopefully things stay pretty quiet here in the tropics, and hey, it's still a long way to go in the season. We haven't even reached the peak of it as we head into late August and September. All right, make the most of it. If I don't see you on Friday, enjoy your 4th of July holiday.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.